Coming up in today's edition of Locked On Eagles, we're going to talk about the biggest match, Super Bowl 57, the Eagles defense against Travis Kelce. You win that matchup, you probably win the Super Bowl. All that and more on this Wednesday edition of Locked On Eagles.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Welcome in, Eagles fans, to a Wednesday edition of the show. I'm Louis DiBiase, and he's Gino Camilleri. This episode is brought to you by Nissan. The only thing more exciting than the big game is the all-new, all-electric 2023 Nissan Ariya. There's only 4 days left now until the Super Bowl. Are you ready? The Nissan Ariya, the EV for people who love to drive. Learn more at nissanusa.com. As always, thanks for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you're new to Locked On Eagles, we are a daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, really your only daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, posting Monday through Friday on YouTube and all podcast platforms. And we're getting you ready for Eagles Chiefs this Sunday, Super Bowl 57. Gino, we've been diving into pretty much every storyline that you could think of, and we still have 2 more shows to do that, right? Crossover Thursday tomorrow with the boys over at Locked On Chiefs. Podcast for you on Friday as well. But today, all I woke up thinking about really was one key matchup that I feel like if you win that matchup, you win this game. Because I think the Eagles do have the advantage. Unlike the game against San Francisco, I think the Eagles have the advantage at almost every spot, except for one key area they have to worry about, and it's that Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce connection. I don't know if you agree, man, but I feel like if you win that matchup, you probably win this game.
Yeah, let's work backwards and start where you said that every other position seems to be that the Eagles have a slight advantage, and I would be hard-pressed to find a position elsewhere that they don't. I mean, look at safety. I think Chaunce Gardner-Johnson is probably the best player at his respective position in this game. It's probably close. You know, I love Juan Thornhill. I don't think corner's close. I think Slay and Bradberry blow them out of the water. Add Avonte, Maddox in there. I don't think defensive line is close. I don't think linebacker is close. If Nick Bolton is the best option that you have, man, that good luck. Like, good luck trying to defend Dallas Goedert. Offensive line, as much as people want to say that the interior might be close, well, they have 2 of the best tackles in the league. It's not close there. Running back, don't think it's universally close at all. They just activated Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and now you're having to rely on Isaiah Pacheco, who's good in his own right, but he's still very young, like a lot of these players. Wide receiver, it's probably close in terms of depth if they were fully healthy,
but not
you have
nearly
2
when it comes to
1,000-yard
receivers.
Exactly. You have 2 1,000-yard receivers for the Eagles. So the last position, it's quarterback, it's tight end. Tight end, it's going to be probably pretty close with Dallas Goedert and Travis Kelce, but Kelce is a unicorn. Right. We know that, much like Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, and no, the Eagles definitely have a quarterback tight end combo in their own right. That's one of the best in the NFL. I was talking more just Mahomes and Travis Kelce versus the Eagles defense. That's the one area where I feel like if the Chiefs get the best of the Eagles in that spot, they could win this football game regardless of everything else really going the Eagles' way. And that's why, Gino, I've been thinking about ways to, and again, you're not going to completely erase Travis Kelce. He might be the greatest open field threat at the tight end position in NFL history, right? So you can only hope to limit him. But I've been thinking of ways to do that because obviously the Eagles are in their base. They're a very zone-heavy defense. And you're not going to completely throw everything you've done out the window for one game, right? You're the number 1 passing defense in the league for a reason. But at the same time, I know Kelce just thrives in those option routes against zone coverage, and I just don't want to see him going untouched, being up against TJ Edwards and Avonte Maddox and guys that just shouldn't be on him. To be honest, I don't know. I would love to see Darius Slay or James Bradberry say every play, even if they're running zone everywhere else, I am following Travis Kelce wherever he goes, and just make him stop you that way. And that's the way I would do it. I don't know if you do like a box and one basketball type of zone, but I think you got to use some of your elite coverage corners to stop this guy or at least limit him.
I think you make a lot of good points, and you have, especially on Twitter as well, about the Rob Gronkowski comparison in Super Bowl 52 to what Travis Kelce can do. And we mentioned this on yesterday's show that when they moved him from Jalen Mills' side, who's a big physical corner who matches up well against guys like that, who I could see James Bradberry being a very good matchup with Travis Kelce if you were willing to go that route, or even CGJ. But as soon as they moved Rob Gronkowski over to Ronald Darby's side, a smaller, quicker, goes against those fast twitch guys better, he got bullied all day long. He went from, 9 yards in the first half.
One catch for 9 yards, and then it was 8 catches for 107 and a touchdown in the second half. And that
almost had 2 touchdowns as well.
And it nearly won them the game. And you look at in the first half, they kept stalling out in the red zone and they had to settle for field goals. And a huge part of that was, it sounds crazy now looking back, but Jalen Mills did an incredible job on Gronk.
Without a doubt. And I look at it saying the same type of thing. You can't let Travis Kelce ruin this game, much like Haason Reddick shouldn't be able to blow up your game plan for Kansas City. Travis Kelce shouldn't be the guy to blow up your offensive game or your defensive game plan rather. And how do you do that? Well, you said, well, if you could just follow him around. Well, there's actually a term for that in zone. It's called MEG, man everywhere go. So basically everybody else plays zone, you play MEG. So if they want to go
That's
about
what I'm talking about, man. That's what I want.
And that's the thing with Travis Kelce, too. You're not going to have to follow him from inline all the time. He's also going to be split out wide. Those are perfect opportunities to get a bigger bodied cornerback like James Bradberry on him. But at the same time, you don't want to throw everything out the kitchen sink. But at the same time, you haven't seen a unicorn all year to this ability to where you truly have to change your entire game plan. And going against Steve Spagnuolo, who, as a defensive coordinator, he loves to change his tendencies from the regular season to the postseason. I think they were running a boatload of man during the regular season. Then they switched to zone or vice versa. But I think that's something the Eagles might want to try. Like, just go away from the tendencies. Make Kansas City sit back and say, okay, we have to refinagle our game plan here. And we know Andy Reid will probably be 5-6 steps ahead.
Sure.
But you have to know that Andy Reid is going to be that many steps ahead. So you have to try and counteract that. And if Jonathan
that's why I don't
Gannon,
want to scheme to stop Kelce. I just want my elite guys to go up against him and say, if you're going to beat us, you're going to beat Darius Slay or James Bradberry. And if the Eagles are going to lose, it's because Marcus Valdes-Scantling had a huge game, or Juju Smith-Schuster. I can live with that. It's like double teaming Steph Curry. Look, if Andrew Wiggins beats me, or if, back in the day, Harrison Barnes beats me because he hits 10 threes because he's open in the corner, that's fine. I'll live with losing a Super Bowl that way, but I'm not going to lose having Travis Kelce have 10 catches for 130 yards and 2 scores when that's the one thing they can do just as well as you can. Whereas everything else, the Eagles have the advantage. And the other thing is, Gino, they don't have a Tyreek Hill anymore to be concerned with, oh no, if we move Slayer Bradberry to follow Kelce, now what is Avonte Maddox or Chaunce Gardner-Johnson and Tyreek Hill? No, it's Valdes-Scantling or Juju. And you have the talent where even if you mentioned you want Bradberry on Kelce, guess what? You still have Darius Slay on the boundary. It's not like, oh no, now we have Michael Jacquet or Nolan Carroll on these guys. So I feel like the situation just perfectly presents itself to be like, this is the guy to stop. Yes, we're not going to completely ignore everything else, but if we limit him, your percentage chance of winning this game just skyrockets.
I think if you look at what the Eagles have done against those premier talents this year, and going back to the Justin Jefferson game, they did a fantastic job taking him out of that game. Saquon on multiple occasions they took out of the game. Jonathan Taylor they were able to eliminate. Going down the stretch where you're playing these guys that it's them or nobody, the Eagles did an excellent job at that, Lou. And I would have to believe that, which I've said all year, until they prove me wrong, to where if I look at the box score on Monday and I'm saying, well, how did Travis Kelce end up with 165 yards and 2 touchdowns? Then we can go back and be more critical. But you'd have to believe that if you just go one-on-one, you have the horses to play with them, but you have the guys in the building to have that chess piece mentality where you can move these guys everywhere. Like you said, it's not Michael Jacquet who has to play the boundary corner position because he simply isn't athletic enough to go play the field. These guys can play all over. And that's going to be the best part, is seeing 2 chess grandmasters. I mean, respect to Andy Reid, who's far superior than what
I know what
Jonathan Gannon has done, but he's done a great job scheming and taking away those top guys. So you would have to believe that that's the case. Like you said, if we go into Monday and Isaiah Pacheco runs for $1 and Valdes-Scantling has 85 yards and a touchdown, so be it.
I'm with you.
But if you lose to Travis Kelce, get out of Dodge.
Exactly. So Meg coverage is the exact name for
Meg.
it. That is what I'm looking for on Sunday between the Eagles and Chiefs. But Gino, we got more matchups coming up next. Eagles Chiefs this Sunday, Super Bowl 57 in Arizona. We'll cover it more right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. And guys, today it's brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. You've heard me talk about this mobile game app, and I can't tell you how much fun we've had competing against our fellow Locked On NFL hosts. Chris Carter of Locked On Steelers, he was our Locked On NFL champion. Now it's your turn to compete. But more on that later. Ever dreamed of becoming an NFL GM and managing your football franchise? Well, your dream can come true, and this game is definitely for you. You'll manage every strategic aspect of your team, play through the seasons, and lead your team to glory, trying to build a dynasty. With Ultimate Football GM, you're responsible for controlling the destiny of your franchise by hiring the right coaches and coordinators, trading players, navigating your franchise through free agency and the draft, and all the ups and downs of a season, all in this challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Football GM is completely free and playable offline. Play on the go as you want to, when you want to. We've created a Locked On League. Like I said, it's been so much fun. Get your friends and family involved. Locked On Eagles listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when they use the promo code Locked On in all caps in the game store. That's Locked On, LOCKEDON. So make sure to check it out today. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up in your app store. That's ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty today. We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Guys, make sure you're checking out the entire Locked On Podcast Network this week for Super Bowl week. You've got Locked On Today with Peter Bukowski, Locked On NFL, the Peacock and Williamson Show, Locked On Eagles, Locked On Chiefs. Every single day, we've all got podcasts for you on all podcast platforms. Gino, today we're diving into the matchups, right? We talked about how you stopped Travis Kelce like you did in the first half of Super Bowl 52 against Rob Gronkowski. You can win. Your percentage chance of winning this game just completely skyrockets because I feel like the Eagles have, outside of that matchup, really the advantage everywhere else. Is there another matchup you're thinking of that comes to your head that's like, if this game is determined by something, what else is it outside of Kelce versus this defense?
I think it's the two big names on the defensive line for Kansas City. How are you going to stop Frank Clark and Chris Jones?
Sure.
And,
yeah. It's a good one.
I mean, it makes a ton of sense. Being an Eagles supporter, how can a team stop a defensive line when they have two guys that are elite? It's tough.
Yeah.
How do you stop it? The offensive line, which happens to be very, very good in its own right. And if I had to trust one person going into this week to put together a game plan to stop Chris Jones and Frank Clark, it is the Messiah. It is Jeff Stoutland, the guy who schemes up the protections. And there's a great follow on Twitter, Honest NFL. He used to work for the Eagles, and he went back to that game when they played Kansas City, and he's like, I can't even take anything away when it comes to offensive line versus defensive line, because if you remember in that game, Lane Johnson was a late scratch.
Oh, yeah, they were beat
game.
up, man. Yeah.
Jack Driscoll has to play at right tackle for you. I believe they were also down at right guard as well.
Yep.
They were shorthanded in that game. You're going to have Lane Johnson, who still, even with a torn groin, is playing at an unbelievable rate.
Erase Nick Bosa, like in Kayvon Thibodeau, like they were nothing.
Took him out of the game. And that's where I look at and say, if you schemed up that game plan against Bosa and Kayvon Thibodeau, and you've done the same all year long against those premier pass rushers, who am I to say that Jeff Stoutland won't come up with a great way to stop them? Because look at what Chris Jones did against the Cincinnati Bengals. He single-handedly destroyed their entire game plan. Joe Burrow couldn't do what he wanted. They couldn't get things going in the run game like they wanted because this guy, Chris Jones, a guy out of Mississippi State who plays 3-tech, Fletcher Cox, very
we know that very well.
We know exactly how easily these guys can blow it up. And when we go back to that Super Bowl in 2017 or 2017 season, where did the pressure come from on the strip sack from Brandon Graham?
BG moved inside.
Bingo. Interior pressure. Whoever gets more interior pressure in this game, I think, walks away the winner. Because Patrick
I totally
Mahomes,
agree. Yeah.
He's not going to want somebody in his face.
I was going to say you flip it, and it's the same thing. I think the key matchup on the other side is if Haason Reddick, like a key in limiting Travis Kelce is just having Patrick Mahomes run for his life, not have time to find Kelce over the middle. And this Chiefs offensive line definitely underrated, and it's way better than it was a few years ago. But you look at a few years ago, how did Tampa Bay totally limit Mahomes and blow this team out of the water? in the Super Bowl, it was the pass rush completely wrecking that ball game. Mahomes could never settle in. He was running for his life. And again, they're much improved up front now. But the Eagles, this 2022 pass rush is one of the greatest and deepest in NFL history. So if you get Mahomes, who's, by the way, still on an ankle that is not close to 100%, he looks a lot better, but he's not close to being 100%. You make this guy have to play off script and outside of structure and get on the run. That's going to be so massive.
I think the important part is getting the pressure from the interior, but also holding that contain on the edge. Like you can't over pursue on the edge if your goal is to get that interior.
And don't touch
pressure.
him when he gets out of bounds.
Exactly. Great point, Lou. But if Mahomes gets off schedule, that only allows him and Travis Kelce to do what they do best, and that is to play off rhythm, play that scramble drill. What do you have to do to combat that?
Yeah.
People have been saying that the Eagles won't be able to get pressure to Patrick Mahomes, and everybody thinks they're going to be able to do that. I truly do. How can you say that with those guys, they are not going to be able to generate pressure, where maybe even if it's 4 or 5 plays where Mahomes is running for his life? Cincinnati wasn't doing that last week. I mean, they were getting pressure, don't get me wrong, but they don't have that depth. Yeah, you got Trey Hendrickson and you got Sam Hubbard, but outside of that, they don't have that interior 3, 4, 5 guys that you could just continually plug in there. And Lou, who was the guy on that Tampa Bay defense that the Eagles happen to have on their defense? Ndamukong Suh. He was a key part of making Patrick Mahomes run for his life. I think if you look at most of the important games through NFL history, it might just come down to interior pressure. And who do I believe? It's the Eagles who could pitch 5, 6, 7, 8 guys in there, because you can move BG inside. You can move. You're going to mug Haason Reddick up in the A-gap 1 or 2 times in this game. You're going to move
guys outside.
Milton Williams in and outside.
Milton,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And it's not just the Super Bowl between Tampa Bay and Kansas City where you've seen a pass rush completely dominate an elite quarterback. I mean, look back in 2015, the last time an edge rusher won a Super Bowl MVP, it was Von Miller, who totally erased Cam Newton, who they went 15-1 that year, and he won. He was the unanimous MVP. So that's the thing, is this pass rush could really take over, and it can help your secondary deal with Travis Kelce and Andy Reid, who his play calling, it's going to be magnificent as it always is. Don't give him time to allow things to develop, because this year with the Chiefs, they're not the same off script, let's just find Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce down the field kind of team. No, this is a very more intricate, schemed attack, because a lot of the time they have to with the B minus receivers that they have. So the pass rush can definitely disrupt everything. And I think on both sides, that's definitely going to be the key for the Eagles winning a Super Bowl. Guys, we'll wrap up the show coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles. I want to get into something. The Eagles aren't underdogs like they were in 2017, but there are a lot of players still that have a lot to prove in Arizona this Sunday. So we'll get into that, all that and more on this Wednesday edition of Locked On Eagles. And guys, it is brought to you today by Prize Picks Daily Fantasy. This is how it works. You pick 2 to 6 players, and if they're going to score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can ride this with Eagles Chiefs on Sunday. You can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. No competing against other people. It's just you versus the projection available. Of course, you can compete with the Super Bowl, and you can also do college football when the season comes back. The NBA right now, LeBron James just broke the all-time scoring record, so it's been fun to follow along with basketball and the NHL. But it's not just that. You got the PGA, women's sports like women's college basketball and the WNBA, esports, NASCAR, boxing, MMA, disc golf, everything you could think of. It's available at Prize Picks. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy, safe, and fast withdrawals as well. They're currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. Download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code LOCKEDON. So if you deposit $100, Prize Picks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, Prize Picks is going to get you $50. Don't forget to enter that promo code LOCKEDON at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100.
Well, you have your phone to make your Prize Picks projections in one hand. In your other hand, you could grab a tasty Built Bar to go. You get these things in a box of 4 over at Walmart, or a box of 13 over at Sam's Club, or you can order the traditional at Built.com. There's never been more ways to get the delicious Built Bar that we have been plugging now for 5 years. It's 5 years for Lou and I here, and I can't even tell you how many Built Bars I've ever eaten in my life. They continue to come out with great flavors. You got the classics, churro, peanut butter, brownie, and coconut. All of them are covered in 100% real chocolate. It doesn't taste like the fake chocolatey stuff that you buy at a gas station when you buy another protein bar. No, I don't even consider this a protein bar. I consider it candy that happens to be very healthy for you as well. Only 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and 17 grams of protein. I have one every day before I go to the gym. It keeps you fueled. It keeps you ready to go. I'll have them on deck this Sunday because I get anxiety when the Eagles play. I can only eat a little bit. The Built Bar will keep me fueled up to take on all the stress that will be Super Bowl 57 this weekend. But make sure you go to Built.com today, Sam's Club, or your local Walmart to check them out. Get whatever kind you desire. Just make sure you don't get whatever Lou likes because his taste is a little bit off.
They're definitely off for sure. We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen every day. It's a Wednesday edition of the show. I'm Louis DiBiase. He's Gino Camilleri. Can't believe it. We've got just after this 2 more podcasts, and then we're getting ready for the Super Bowl. Eagles, Chiefs.
Unbelievable.
It's unreal how fast things just go through the NFL, especially when you do a podcast every day. So, Gino, of course, this is going to be such an exciting week. It already has been. And they're heading in this time and it feels different, right? They're not the underdogs of 2017 where we're kind of just enjoying the ride, right? And it's until the clock hit 0, I never truly believed they could beat Tom Brady, Rob Gronkowski, Bill Belichick in that New England Patriots dynasty. And they pulled it off. Whereas this time, they're favored right now. I expect them to go in and win it. So the nerves are definitely, I feel like, a little bit higher in that way because you are expecting it. And then, so for me, though, at the same time, just because they are favored, you look at this team, there is still a lot to prove, though. These guys still have, this entire season, when you look at, again, we've talked about this before, you zoom in and you should be expected to be here considering how good they were in 2022, but you zoom out and you look at the journey these players have taken and they got a lot to prove still. There were a lot of guys that were counted out. I mean, Jalen Hurts is the most doubted quarterback maybe in Eagles history, but it's not just him. You could do the Jason Kelce speech with this, right? It's Devontae Smith and how people thought he was undersized, and A.J. Brown, the Titans didn't want to pay him. Miles Sanders all offseason was getting called overrated by his, he was getting overrated by his own fan base. And Haason Reddick, people didn't think was the star defensive player of the year candidate he is. They thought Fletcher Cox was washed. Brandon Graham, TJ Edwards couldn't cover. It really is the whole damn team.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do feel like just because they're favored and they're not the underdogs of 2017, this team still has a huge chip on their shoulder and they're trying to prove something against a team that is more so seen as the dynasty type of the last 5 years.
Outside Jeffrey Lurie, Howie Roseman,
Jeff
Stoutland, and 5 of the players, not many of these guys were around for that Super Bowl. They don't want to hear it. Dallas Goedert was the first player picked after that Super Bowl. He probably had aspirations. We're going back to back with this thing. Him and Miles Sanders. Line it up.
They learned quick how hard it was just to get to the playoffs those years.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you're back here once again with guys that have so much to prove. I love that you brought this point up, Lou, because you look at the Milton Williams of the world where Tom Donahoe didn't even want to shake Howie Roseman's hand after the pick because he didn't believe in Milton
James Bradberry got cut straight up by New York. They just said,
Chaunce Gardner-Johnson couldn't play free safety.
The Saints didn't want to give him a contract. They paid Honey Badger instead and Marcus May and you know what I mean?
Boston Scott, he was a practice squad player. The Eagles gave him a chance. You don't think he's itching at the bit right now? I mean, even the depth guys, the Zach Pascals that have been around in multiple different schemes and multiple different coaching staffs and have been written off. And Nick Sirianni trusts this guy to come in and do what he wants.
Speaking of Nick Sirianni, Gino, how about Nick Sirianni?
Yeah,
and the criticism and the doubt he's gotten the last 2 years.
This is one of those games where, you walk in with the expectation, but it's not unwarranted. It's not like we're saying that this team is 2017 and they're going to come in here and steamroll them with a backup left tackle and without Darren Sproles. And no, this is a team that is, unlike popular belief that they haven't, quote unquote, been tested. They don't need to be tested when they are the thermostat, as Jalen Hurts said. They set the temperature of the room, and they've done that for 20 weeks now. And they have to go into this game and believe it, because the second you lose that game is when you go into that stadium and you look across and you're like, oh, Patrick Mahomes is there, and it makes you hesitate for a second. The greatest thing about 2017 was that the guy they were facing all game in Tom Brady, they never once wavered. They never once were scared of that guy. They went in there and just played it like it was another game. And that's how you have to attack this. Yes, everybody's going to be watching. It's the most viewed game across the entire world. People from different continents are going to be watching. But at the end of the day, it's a football game. And do the Eagles have great players? Freaking right they do, man. And
it's the most talented roster ever. And that's the thing
without a doubt.
This team, they kind of have the best of both worlds. They have that motivation of the chip on their shoulder because of everything I just laid out. But at the same time, these guys have been here before at the NFL level, if not at the NFL level, at the college level. Even the young guys are mature and ready to go, and they're not going to waver. And like you said, it could be very understandable why you would waver when you're going up against Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, why in 2017 you would have wavered against Brady and Belichick at this kind of stage. But Gino, I trust this team is going to be so ready to go on Sunday that they're not going to let this big event, romanticized 2 weeks get the best of them. And I think they're going to be motivated for sure for a lot of these guys, get that first ring. We'll continue to cover it all week. We've got Thursday show crossover with Locked On Chiefs. All 4 of us are going to be on that show together. A podcast Friday for you as well with Gino and I. And then it's time for Super Bowl 57. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Eagles and the entire Locked On Podcast Network on all podcast platforms and on YouTube as well. As always, thanks for making Locked On Eagles your first listen every day. Make sure to also subscribe to Locked On NFL specifically to get daily conversations on the biggest NFL stories, Super Bowl week, key predictions throughout the year, game-to-game episodes, all that and more available wherever you get Locked On Eagles. For Gino Camilleri, I'm Lou DiBiase signing off. As always, thank you for downloading, thank you for watching and listening, and let's go Birds.
Fly, Eagles, fly.